Yesterday, Sayadaw said that in everybody's being, there is a group of physicality. There's a group of feeling, or Vedana. There's a group of perceptions, or Sanya. There's a group of Chitta, mind. And there's a group of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on, various types of consciousness and experiences. And these are called khandhas, which means aggregate or group. And they are really existing dhammas. And they are called Bhumi. They are called Bhumi. Bhumi means earth. And because they're like the earth, these dhammas that arise in everyone's being, these 5 khandhas are also called Bhumi. So the earth is a base in which trees grow and on which beings live. So various things reside on the earth, and without it, those things would have no way to exist. Trees wouldn't have any place to grow, and beings wouldn't have any place to live. So Bhumi is the base on which various things grow. And in our being, the physical and mental phenomena that arise are like this Bhumi, so they're also called Bhumi. So why is that? Because in the ordinary earth, a variety of trees grow. And in our physical and mental phenomena that arise in our being, of physicality and mentality, various things arise. For example, kilesas. So they arise based on the physicality and mentality. So regarding physicality and mentality, greed arises. Regarding physicality and mentality, anger arises when we observe, when it's something we don't like. Greed arises when it's something likable and we don't have control. And delusion arises also based on this physicality and mentality of our being. Mana, pride, and so on. So these kilesas arise regarding our physicality and mentality. And due to these kilesas, one does various despicable things, like kill, steal, commit adultery, lie, and so on, drink and drugs, and waste time in things that aren't very beneficial, like playing music or going to movies. So in this way, our physical and verbal behavior, when one acts on kilesas, physical, verbal, and mental behavior are all gross. So our mental behavior, misdeeds are things like wanting to harm others, or not believing that doing good will bring any good result, not believing that bad will bring bad result. So these things, where do they arise? They arise based in the khandhas, in the aggregates. So, like on the earth, various things may arise constantly. For us, except for the time when we're asleep, these kilesas can arise based on the earth of our being. And for one who doesn't cherish the practice and cherish themselves, their existence, what they experience, becomes a tangle of weeds. And in that tangle of weeds, just as in a real jungle, weedy jungle, poisonous snakes and other harmful animals may reside. And in such a place, if one were to enter such a place, one would surely suffer. For us in our lives, it's the same way. Our lives can become a tangle of weeds, and within that there are things that are dangerous to us. So although we didn't necessarily ask for this life, we have it. And so it's as though we have this plot of earth, and if we use it, then good things will arise in it. And because the good things arise, then kilesas won't have a place. We can plant what we want, things that are useful. But earth is just earth, so if we use it, it becomes useful. And if we don't, it's not. It becomes a plot of weeds, and so too our life. If we use it, it will become useful, but if we just let it go, it will become a patch of kilesas. So for the most part in the world, people are involved in sense pleasures, going after what they want, becoming angry over things that they dislike. And this happens a lot. And for such beings, this is the opposite of the gentle, lovable, and cherishable behaviors that are cultivated through the practice. The beings don't cultivate these, and therefore they're really to be pitied. But we can't control what other people do. So what's important is to use the plot of land that we have, which is our being, so that it'll be useful. So if one doesn't use our land, if we have a plot of land, if we don't develop it, then weeds will grow, and in the weeds there will be things that are harmful, such as snakes. And the same way with our being, if we don't come to understand our being by discerning physicality and mentality, how these are related by cause and effect, and then how they arise and pass away. Due to this arising and passing away, they're unsatisfactory. And they do this without an inherent self. There's no self involved. So if we don't discern this about our being, beginning with ignorance, kilesas will arise. One will know wrongly and not at all. And there won't be, this is disgusting to be ignorant like this, but one won't have any disgust. One won't see the disgusting aspect of akusalas, and the mind will be scattered. Being scattered, when it meets with something likable, there won't be any control over it, and greed will arise. And when it meets with something detestable, then anger will arise, and hatred, and there won't be any end to these feelings. And pride, envy, jealousy, and so on. Just like a variety of weeds arise in a plot of land that isn't cultivated, so too various kilesas will arise in our beings without practice, and that is certain. So why is it that this happens? Just as like the real earth, it's because we don't take the care to develop useful things in our being. Just like with the plot of earth, we don't bother to grow useful plants. So if we have a plot of land, at least we can make it beautiful. And beyond that, we could even plant things that are useful, like fruit trees. And when we plant them, then we can use the fruit. So earth is just earth, and it depends on whether one uses it. If one uses it, one can put useful things in it and then get the benefit. And if not, then kilesas will arise and those will be unuseful. So, if one doesn't use one's own plot of earth, then it won't be useful. But if one uses it, then what one should do is to mark out the plot of land. Each of us has our own plot of land, and we need to, if we're going to plant something, then we plant it in an area and then mark off the area, fence it so that that area will be free of trouble, have protection for the plant, and add water it as needed. And when roots start to develop, when it starts to sprout, then we have to rake the soil and add fertilizer. And we also have to make sure that pests don't come and attack the plant. And also get rid of any cobwebs that might develop. So only then will our plants be free of pests. And then they'll thrive and they'll bear fruit. So if we plant a tree, plant a seed, but then we don't maintain it, that won't be any good. We need to maintain the plants that we plant. So once we've planted a plant, just like when we plant a real plant, for us, we're planting the seed of Vipassana. And now that we've planted the seed of Vipassana, we have to protect it, first of all, with sila, so that this little sprout will not be destroyed. So, and protecting it with sila means keeping a minimum of 5 precepts. And according to one's desire, if one wants to keep 8 precepts, one can do so, or the Jivatamaka sila, 8 precepts, the easy 8 precepts. Or one can become a monk, keep the sila of a monk. But whatever level of sila one keeps, it needs to be kept cleanly. Because a break in our sila, whatever level of sila it is, whether it's 5 precepts, 8, or the patimaka of the monks, if there's a hole in it, it's like having a hole in our fence. And we need to water the plant. So from time to time one needs to listen to the Dhamma and one needs to discuss what's unclear. So if we don't water the tree, then it won't be healthy. It won't have much chance to live. So one needs to water the tree. And one also needs to add fertilizer so that the tree will be stronger. And this is like reporting to the teacher. And also one needs to eliminate pests. So that means that one has to note with aim and effort so that the samatha arises, which keeps out the nivaranas, the hindrances. When the aim and effort are used and samadhi arises, there's no chance for kilesas to arise. But if they do happen to arise, one has to observe them. So either protect the Vipassana plants so that kilesas don't arise, but if they do, then you have to get rid of them, and that's by noting. And when our noting is good, then even regarding, there can be even subtle craving regarding our experiences in meditation. So these are like cobwebs that can collect on a plant. Those also need to be dispelled. So if one can observe the arising and passing away of phenomena, then that is the beginning of Vipassana knowledge. And as one continues, when Vipassana knowledge is mature, then one will realize the intangible happiness of Nibbana, that which is not connected with sense pleasures. On one's own plot of earth that is our khandhas, we can plant valuable things, just like we can plant valuable trees on a plot of land. But if we don't, then weeds will arise. In our own little plot of land, there will be transgressive kilesas, acts, verbal and physical transgressions. And without the control of mindfulness, then the obsessive kilesas will arise, and this will happen again and again. So in every second and in an hour there will be a real forest. So, and also, if we don't get rid of the seeds, the submerged seeds of the kilesas, then they'll just continue to arise when they have the chance. So one can guess that if we have kilesas in our being, then we won't be able to discern rupa and nama, physicality and mentality. We won't see how they're related due to cause and effect in various ways. So one won't know these things, the various levels of knowledge that are developed through the practice. The physicality and mentality, whatever arises in our being, when it is not fully known, is the ground for kilesas, is fuel for kilesas. So how is it that our nama and rupa, this physicality and mentality, are known? One is jnata parinya, the full jnata. Jnata parinya is the first type of full understanding. Tirana parinya is the second type of full understanding. And the third is pahana parinya. So there's these three kinds of discerning or understanding physicality and mentality. So among these three, the first is jnata parinya, and this phrase contains two parts, jnata and parinya. And jnata means that which is evident or distinct. And seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, these are distinct. And physicality and mentality are distinct, and they are evident, and they are related by cause and effect. So these occur, and they are evident when we note them as they arise with aim and effort. When our samadhi is good, one will first of all come to distinguish physicality and mentality. And when one continues observing, one will know how they're related in various ways as cause and effect. How physicality causes mentality, and how physicality can cause physicality, how mentality can cause physicality, and how mentality causes mentality. So one will know all these ways, that physicality and mentality are related. One will come to observe and discern physicality and mentality, and through continuing to observe, one will see their cause and effect relationships. And this knowledge is jnata parinya. So if there's no practice of satipatthana, or no effort to observe the object, no aim, then regarding the Dhamma of physicality and mentality, cause and effect, there will be no mindfulness, and therefore there will be no samadhi. The mind will be scattered, and therefore that which is evident will not be known. Jnata will not be known. So cause and effect will not be known. So starting with ignorance, kilesas will arise. When something likable when one meets with something likable, then there will be greed, wanting. And when one meets with something dislikable, then there will be anger, hatred, and worse. And there will be laziness, sloth, and torpor, and a variety of kilesas will arise. So just like when we don't use our ground, weeds will grow, so too these kilesa weeds will just arise without any effort on our part, without us doing anything to urge them on. They'll just take over. So why is that? It's because we don't observe the arising phenomenon. There's no effort to observe the arising object. So when the khandhas, the dhammas of nama and rupa, are not distinctly known, are not fully understood, then there will be kilesa bhumi, the field of kilesas. When phenomena arise, when the khandhas arise, when rupa and nama arise, with effort to observe the object and aim, sati will arise. Due to sati arising, there will be samadhi, and based on the samadhi there will be knowledge. So at that point kilesas can't arise. There's no longer a place for kilesas to arise because knowledge is there. The kusala has taken the place of kilesas. So if ignorance is not present, then it's for sure that no other kilesa can arise. And this is panya bhumi, the field of wisdom, or vipassana bhumi, the field of vipassana. When one doesn't apply the practice later on, what will happen? Well, one won't know physicality and mentality. So this physicality and mentality, which really exist, not knowing them, one will believe that it's a self, that there's a being, that this is a being. And not knowing how these are related due to cause and effect, if one doesn't observe that, one will think that there's no cause, that these arise without a cause, or one will attribute the cause of one's existence to a Mahabrahma or some type of creator being. So not seeing the discernment of rupa and nama, physicality and mentality, one will take it to be a self. And that one will follow the view of attaditi, the false belief in self. And not seeing the relationship of cause and effect, how they're related, due to cause and effect. One will either grasp onto the belief of causelessness, ahetuka deity, or one will attribute the wrong cause, visamahetuka deity. One will attribute a false cause to one's existence. So one won't be free of these misperceptions, and one won't have a way to clear these weeds. If one observes with the practice of Satipatthana, then physicality and mentality are known distinctly, and their cause-effect relationship is also known distinctly. And in that case, being free of discerning physicality and mentality, one is free of the view of self. And discerning their cause and effect relationship, one is free of the view of a creator. And this is jnata parinya, knowing in this way. So discerning mind and body, cause and effect, is jnata parinya. And in 2 months of meditation practice, it's likely that one has achieved this basis by now. So if one is free of these 2 big weeds, of the view of self and the false view of a creator, then this is not an insignificant accomplishment. But if one doesn't yet see the way that these physicality and mentality, which are conditioned, arise and pass away, how they are unsatisfactory because of this, and how they lack an inherent self, then one still has the view that one's existence, one's experience is permanent and pleasant, and there's a self involved. So thus, one should continue to observe physicality and mentality, to see these 3 characteristics. If one continues to note, then one's noting increases, and one comes to be able to note a lot. And one can note the details, and one can note without missing. So one comes to know more and more about the physicality and mentality and their cause and effect relationships. And when the effort, mindfulness and samadhi are good and aiming, then one sees how these phenomena of nama and rupa, which are related by cause and effect, how they arise and end. One doesn't purposely try to create this vision. This becomes apparent naturally through one's practice. One comes to see how the physicality and mentality, conditioned phenomena, arise and then pass away. And because they don't last, they're suffering, unsatisfactory. And they are arising and passing away without any inherent self. They're just cause and effect that are going on their own. So these are aspects of physicality and mentality that are related by cause and effect. These aspects are apparent. And one sees the nature of the phenomena, the physicality and mentality, and one also sees that they arise one after another, and they also disappear. And one knows Well, it's not permanent. That is not permanent. This perception arises naturally in one's mind. This knowledge arises naturally in one's mind. So one observes the objects directly, and their aspect, the aspect of their impermanence arises. That is not permanent, that is suffering, or that is not self. This, knowing this, is Parinnyas. Parinnyas is that which sees the aspects 3 of body-mind distinctly. Parinnyas. So it's able to see how these causally related body and mind have 3 common characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and no self. And this Parinnyas, this full understanding of Tirana, arises at the stage of Samasananyana and Udyabhayana. And these are Vipassana knowledges that arise. This is Vipassana Bhumi. Therefore, Kilesa Bhumi is not occurring. Vipassana Bhumi is occurring. One is making use of one's plot of land, one's being. And the appearance of impermanence, the appearance of the aspects of impermanence, suffering, and selflessness are the start of Vipassana knowledge. And at this point, the yogi is in a very good situation. At the stage of Udyabhayana, when one is knowing the arising and passing away of the objects, one knows them. The noting is very good and fast, and the objects just now they arise and immediately they pass away. The old is constantly being replaced by the new. At the tender stage of Udyabhayana, at the initial stage, there will be phenomena such as lights. One will see lights, or there will be joyous interest and its manifestations, and there will be calmness. But if one continues, one has to observe these phenomena, and as one continues to note, these are no longer evident. These phenomena such as light, piti, joyous, feeling of joy, happiness, and so on. And at that point, the noting is extremely fast. And it proceeds to the point where there's no longer any form. There's no longer any form. One is just aware of nature's sabhavas. And at that point, one doesn't only see the object disappear, but one also sees the noting mind disappear. So when one sees this Vipassana mind disappear, one knows that things are not permanent. So both the object disappears and the mind disappears. Now, if there's anything that one can hold on to, then there will be the view of permanence. If one thinks that anything in one's experience is permanent, then there will be that belief. But when both the object as well as the observing mind disappear, when one sees that, there's no longer anything to grasp onto. There's no longer anything to hang that belief onto. And this knowing, this type of knowing that is free of all clinging, is Parinnyas. Pahana means to be free of or clean of. So seeing clearly, free of dirt, that's this subtle dirt of clinging on. That which expels what should be expelled is Parinnyas. So one sees this clear seeing that is free of any clinging. And that happens when these two, when the mind is seen to disappear. The knowledge of Parinnyas begins at Vanganyana, and continues until one reaches the path knowledge. So it's the Pahana Parinnyas is seeing both the disappearance of the object and the mind. So at this point, when one is knowing with Pahana Parinnyas, this clean type of knowledge, then the kilesa forest is under control. When one reaches path knowledge, then the kilesa forest is quite under control. So at this point, there's no belief in a self or in a person, and there's no longer any doubt with regarding the triple gem. And one understands the correct path, and therefore there's no possibility of walking the wrong path. One's clear about what the right path is. There's still greed and hatred after one realizes path knowledge, but it's lessened. It's no longer to the extent where one can harm others. So the most important weeds have been cleared at the realization of first path. Sayadaw won't say more than this about the progress of insight, because as he said, it's like a math problem. And the main thing to know is that if you use this method, you will get the answer. So in this case, the Buddha said what the answer is. The answer is that with this practice, one can become free of mental impurity. One can reach the end of dukkha, physical suffering, and domanassa, mental suffering. And one can realize the end of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and finally realize path and fruition. So the Buddha said there are 7 benefits we get from this practice, and this is the answer that is at the end of our method. So this is the answer that the Buddha gave, not anyone else. So one shouldn't be hoping for the answer and looking forward to it. One should strictly pay attention to applying the method of Satipatthana, and in time the results that the Buddha guaranteed will appear. So Sayadaw urges everyone to continue to work out the problem. And if one knows more than this about the progress of insight, it can be a disruption to one's practice, because one will expect and so on. So it's better just to know this much. As Sayadaw said, if one doesn't follow the path of Satipatthana, then weeds will grow in one's being. And these kilesa weeds will lead to misdeeds, physically, verbally, and mentally. So there will be no end to suffering or dukkha. This practice is for using one's being to reach the end of suffering. And Sayadaw wishes that you may all be able to eliminate at least the biggest kilesa weeds.